Hello and welcome to Revive 5 for Realtors, the system that is proven to get you an extra 5 deals or more out of your existing database. Today I have, my name is Jeff Eady, and today I have joining me one of the top mortgage brokers in Canada. He's been super successful at his business and built one of the largest mortgage brokerages in the country with over 90 agents working for him at one time. He knows his numbers inside and out, loves to have a great time, and on top of that, really loves to help people and has helped countless Canadians take steps towards securing their financial future. Please welcome Jonathan Tilger. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
I'm excellent, Jeff. Thank you for that incredible intro, and looking forward to going through what we've got today.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting stuff. Take it away, sir.
All right. So as you're listening to this and just watching what we're going through, I just want you to ask one question: what is an extra 5 deals worth to you? So the system really works around waking up your database to cash in. Now, according to the National Association of Realtors, at most in any given year, 10% of your database will be in a position where they're looking to either buy or sell, essentially to use your services. That means if you've got 100 past clients or people in your database, then in any given year, at most 10 of them will be in a situation where they're looking to call you and say, hey, listen, I'd like to use your service. This gives an opportunity to talk to the other 90% about what we have today. And what are we going to be going through? We're really going to be talking about the value that investing in real estate, buying real estate as an investment as opposed to just their residence where they live, can bring to help them reach their financial goals. Now, for those of you who are disqualifying yourself already, saying, hey, listen, you've looked at it in the past, real estate investing is not really your avenue, let me go through a little story. And as I go through the story, just ask yourself, which one of these two people are you in this story? The story is about a shoe company. And the shoe company is entering into a new country. They've not been there before. And so their plan is pretty simple. Let's send our top 2 salespeople there. Let's let them go around and come back with a strategy on how they're going to approach this. Now, as the 2 of them land in the country, they just say, okay, we're getting here, it's morning right now. Let's just walk around for the day. We'll both observe. We'll come back together at the end of the day, and we'll just compare notes of what we've seen. Now, the first thing they both notice as they're walking around is nobody in this country is wearing shoes. So as they get back together, one of the salespeople says, you know what? Nobody here wears shoes. And the second salesperson says, yeah, nobody here wears shoes. So it's really about seeing an opportunity, an untapped market, if you want, that you're not currently in. So investing in property ownership can help your clients. It can really help them with their top financial concerns. The top 3 financial concerns I see with most of my clients. Number 1, how can they pay off their home and their mortgage sooner? Number 2, how can they put together the funds that their kids will need to go to the school of their choice? And number 3, after those 2 things are done, how can they build additional wealth for their retirement? Now, there's a fourth one as well that I'm seeing more and more that is not on here. And that is with those kids, as they're finishing school and they want to get into the housing market, so many kids nowadays are just needing a little bit of help from their parents to get started. So how can they help their kids get into their first home to help set them up for financial success as they grow? So as we are going to be talking about financial information, a little disclaimer. So this is not advice. These are my opinions. And as everybody knows, opinions are like armpits. Everybody has them, and most of them stink. So let's move forward. So Jeff, question for you. You've got $100,000 available to invest. What are your options you can put this money into?
Well, speaking from personal experience, I walked into the bank and said that one day I have $100,000 to invest. First thing they said was an RRSP, and then offered mutual funds within it. But within that realm, there's stocks, bonds, shares, mutual funds. You can start a business for yourself, or of course, the topic of today's conversation, real estate and investment properties.
Now, as I move forward, the one thing I forgot to mention as I started this slide is this is the most important slide of the presentation. So as we're going through this, really pay attention. Pay attention to nothing else. Pay attention to this slide and what it's saying. Because when I saw this and this was presented to me and I understood what it was actually saying, it changed my whole perspective on real estate. So the next part, the next question I have for you. So going to the bank you've been at for the last 15, 20 years, you've been a loyal customer of theirs. You're walking in saying, I've got this $100,000, I want to start a business. Now with $100,000, you're starting a small business. So effectively you're buying yourself a job, but you've got this $100,000 that you want to invest in a business. What do you think that they are going to offer you? This is the bank you've been working with for years. You've been a client of theirs for years. What are they going to offer you in addition to your $100,000? You say, hey, listen, 100,000 won't get me the business I need. I, I, I need a minimum of 200, 300. How much do you think they're going to offer you to match your $100,000?
Well, speaking from personal experience again, typically nothing. But let's say we live in a perfect world. Maybe the amount equal to the collateral you have, or they'll give you 100 grand for 100 grand.
So they're being generous. So let's say they're going to give you $100,000. So same with shares, be it mutual funds, be it something else. Okay, give me the top financial advisor you've got at your bank. Let them invest my money. How much do you think they're going to give you to match the investment or increase your investment?
Well, again, I'm going to have to say usually nothing, but for the purposes of this, maximum, they'll double your money.
All right, now the third scenario, property. You walk into a bank you've never been to before. Say, I've got $100,000. I want to buy a piece of property. I want to buy a house as an investment, a house, a condo, something along those lines. $100,000. How much do you think your bank will, or this bank you've never dealt with before, never walked into before, how much do you think that they would be willing to offer you on this property?
Well, first of all, Jonathan, I really like that you emphasize that point, that because that's exactly what a mortgage broker does, is shops around your deals to all of the banks instead of one. And it doesn't have to be somebody that knows you, but they're not known for being real big risk takers. However, they'll offer you 4 times your money. If I'm not mistaken, it's 20% down on an investment property.
That's correct. So obviously subject to qualification, but 20% down. So you put in $20,000, they will give you 80%. That's the 20%, they'll give you 80. So they will give you $400,000. So that alone, if you just look at that part right there, what does that tell you based on your bank's behavior of how the bank, who is in the financial world, views real estate for security, for an investment, just for, call it a place where the money is protected and safe?
Yeah, well, banks aren't known for liking the thought of losing money, so obviously they deem it pretty secure.
Exactly the case. So as we move forward with this example, so we now have $200,000 available in the business that's being invested in the business, 200,000 in shares in a company, and $500,000 being invested in property. So let's just say the goal is to make $100,000 over a 5-year period. What type of return do we need on each of these? This is again over 5 years to make that $100,000. Well, in that business, you need to make a 50% return. With the investment in shares, mutual funds, something along those lines, you again need to make a 50% return. With real estate, because it's a $500,000 asset, it only needs to go up by 20% to make $100,000 on your initial investment. So over 5 years, 20% over 5 years, that is less than 4% as a compounded rate annually. Does that seem realistic?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of crazy, actually.
So I want to put this in a slightly different way. Would you like to learn how to make $25,000, a 25% return on your investment?
Who wouldn't?
So you purchase an investment property for $500,000. Again, we spoke about it. You invest $100,000 of your money, and the bank lends you $400,000. So let's just say that the property value increases by 5%. So your $500,000 property is now worth $525,000. It has increased $25,000. Keep in mind that you have only invested $100,000. So that $25,000 on your $100,000 investment is a 25% return.
Sorry, Jonathan, that's in 1 year?
5% in a lot of markets is very realistic. I'm not going to go and say, hey, at 5% you'll make in every single market for a growth rate, but in a lot of markets that's very realistic today.
That's insane.
So let's just look at the compound effect. And we spoke about 5% there, but here I've rolled it back to 3%. Why 3%? Well, the primary market I work in is the Greater Toronto Area, so the GTA. They're looking at the long-term trends from 1948 when they first started tracking these. The average growth rate compounded has been 3.8%. Okay, if it's been 3.8% long-term, let's roll it back a little bit to make it more conservative and see, does this still look attractive as an investment? So use 3%. And you'll see with the increase in value, year one is $15,000 and year 5 is $16,883. Though the growth rate is still 3% a year. So what's happening is that over time, because it's compounded, the 3% growth rate is on the value at the start of that year, not the value when you initially purchased the property. So at the end of 5 years, you'll see that this property has gone from $500,000 to $579,000. So that's not too bad, a $79,000 increase. But one of the things I love about real estate is there's additional ways you make money. And one of the other ways is through what's termed principal pay down. Every single month, your mortgage payment is made to the bank or the lender who's holding the mortgage for you. Now, part of that mortgage payment goes towards principal and part towards interest. So the part going towards principal is effectively putting money back in the owner's pocket in the form of equity month over month over month. So over 5 years, that will equate to about $51,000. It will obviously vary based on the rate and everything else, but approximately $51,000. So that means that, again, that initial investment of $100,000 with a 3% growth rate has grown to $131,000 over 5 years. Now, again, I like to be conservative. I like to be realistic. I like to look and say, now with property, you're going to have things like maintenance and repair. Things are going to come up like that. Especially getting into a new property nowadays, there may be a cash shortfall. What I mean by that is you've got monthly rent coming in. And initially, when you buy that property, for the first couple of years, that rent may not cover all the expenses, being your mortgage payment, your property taxes. So let's account for $500 a month towards those two things. So $500 a month over the 5 years is $30,000. So if we take $30,000 away from that, we are still up a little bit over $100,000. How does that sound?
It sounds like a lot better odds than playing the lottery.
Now, I like to show what does an extra couple percent in the growth rate, how does that affect things? This is looking at the same chart, only instead of a 3% growth rate, it is 5%. So with the additional 5%, the property is appreciated to $638,000. So it's a $138,000 increase. We still get that $51,000 principal pay down. But now this property's gone up to almost $190,000 versus $130,000. So a couple extra percent in the growth rate, which a lot of markets have been seeing recently, has a drastic effect in the long-term value and the long-term equity gained through this property.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, a few years ago, the GTA actually saw like 7-8% per annum growth. Is that correct?
There have actually been some periods recently where they've been having double digits.
Holy cow.
So let's just look at this over time and what happens. So we talked about the 5-year, 131,000, 10 years up to 285, 20 years, 676, 30 years. about $1.2 million. Keep in mind, this is on a $100,000 investment. So you can see that those growth rates, 131%, 285, 676, and over 1,000% return over 30 years. And again, if we were to run this at 5%, how do those numbers compare? I love looking at that 30-year number where that property's gone up to over $2 million.
I gotta say, Jonathan, that's really insane how a 2% increase really affects that bottom line.
Oh, it completely the case. So my question to you now is, so now what? If you like what you've seen today, how can you use this in your business? How can you use it to, as we say, tap into your database and help grow your business? Well, step one, calling your existing database and talking to them about their top financial concerns. Would you like to learn how some clients are paying off their home in 10 years? Would you like to learn how some clients are putting their kids through university? Would you like to learn how some clients are building extra wealth for retirement? Now, forget about everything else. If you contacted somebody who you know, you've done past business with, and you approach them with one of these questions, do you think that they would be willing to at least have a conversation with you?
I think more than that, I think just the ability to reach out to them with something that adds value is massive.
Well, that's exactly it. And that's kind of the win-win that I look at with this system. If nothing else, it gives you a reason to reach out to your database, to your past clients. And rather than just saying, hi, how are you? You can actually say, hey, this is something I'm working on. Would you be interested in learning more about it? So let's just look at how things play out here. So this is the same chart we had from before. So we say, hey, paying off the mortgage in 10 years, being able to put down $285,000 on your mortgage. Does that sound attractive to a lot of people?
I think that would help a lot of people out big time.
Or let's talk about kids' education. So we've got a 20-year time frame, assuming you're starting when the kids are an infant. 676,000. Now I just have to ask you, Jeff, how does that compare with the education fund that you had?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that today.
All right, okay, I'll drop that and won't come back here. And of course, building extra wealth for retirement. 1.2 million. Who would like to have an extra 1.2 million dollars for to have the type of retirement that they want?
Well, Jonathan, first of all, just kind of as a joke, that's a heck of a lot better than CPP is going to pay you. But in my experience, that's also a lot more than most people have set aside for their retirement right now.
That is, I'd say it's completely the case. It's not completely the case. A lot of clients who I am working with and have worked with, they're in this situation and better.
So that's amazing. But quick question, a lot of people I know aren't necessarily in that situation. Let's say they've got kids that are 10, 12, 13 years old, or they're sitting at 50 and really starting to look at retirement now. And maybe they had a pension at one point and an ex-wife got it or it's disappeared. How can they accelerate this so it doesn't take 30 years to get there?
Well, the beauty of it is really about having the conversation and finding out what their goals, what their objectives are, and how can this be catered to help them out. Sometimes and many times, especially if they've got a shorter time frame or shorter time horizon, they want to retire in 15 years and they want that 1.2 million, then one property won't do it. In many cases, a lot of the clients I've worked with, they might need to get 2, 3, 4 properties to actually reach the objectives that they want.
So what you're saying is it's duplicatable, it's repeatable, and the more they do it, the more they can actually create wealth from that. Like, can they access the equity from those properties to do this over and over again? Like, there's
They,
no limit.
they certainly can, and that is a great point with accessing the equity, and especially I'd say with past clients who you've worked with, particularly 5, 10 years ago. Most of these people have built up a great amount of equity in their house, and so can show them strategies that they can use that equity to actually get involved and start doing this, so they don't need to have the money out of their own pocket today to get started.
That's amazing.
All right, so another group that's great to talk with is first-time buyers. And I know many of you might be thinking first-time buyers, they're going through the stress of getting into their first property. This isn't something to really introduce. And I agree, at the start of the process, it's not something to introduce. But as they get closer, they found their property, they're either, hey, they're gonna be moving into this in a few weeks, or they've just moved in. I find it's a great conversation to have. Again, it's that extra touch point, reaching out. It's a great conversation to have, to go through and say, hey, this is something I'm doing for a lot of my clients. Are you interested, not necessarily today, but are you interested in a year or 2 years from now in having these conversations? And I will tell you from my experience of talking to the first-time home buyers I have worked with, that every single one of them says, yeah, I want to have this conversation. Many of them have actually said, I've looked at this, I've looked at real estate, I want to get involved in it, obviously buying my first property, but I want to get involved in it in a bigger way as an investment, and I don't know how to get started. So if you can help me out, then you'd be a lifesaver.
I'm just going to add to that, Jonathan. Two quick things. A, I think it's the old school salesperson in me. If they weren't interested in investing, they wouldn't be buying a house for themselves. So strike while the iron is hot.
I'd agree with you right there, yes.
And secondly, a lot of people that I've worked with in the past really don't understand how their mortgage works, or exactly how the financing works. And having the ability to have this conversation up front with first time buyers, I think would really differentiate a realtor from the rest of the crowd.
That's completely the case. And as far as differentiating, I'm going to go to the next slide, because this next strategy is, again, if you want to differentiate yourself, this one really helps you stand out from other realtors who are out there. And this is working in current transactions. So again, Jeff, I'll ask you a question here. What do most people do? They're selling a property that they've lived in for a few years. They're getting, let's just say they're upgrading. They're getting into a bigger house. They built up some equity in their current property. What do they do with that equity most of the time?
Well, the old school traditional way of thinking is pay off your house the mortgage free. So I'm guessing that they sell their current house, upgrade, and dump all of their equity into the new property so they have a lowered mortgage payment.
That's what a lot of people do. So you take, so they've got a $600,000 house, $300,000 mortgage, 300,000 of equity. They'll take that equity, they're buying an $800,000 property, and they'll put the majority of that equity into that property. So they now have a $500,000 mortgage, 300,000 of equity. Effectively, it's just a transfer of equity from one property to the other. In 10 years, what happens? Property goes up to 1.1 million. They've got the $356,000 mortgage outstanding. So they built up about $719,000 of equity in that property. I mean, that's pretty good. But what if you could show them, hey, here's an alternative you could look at that could potentially put you in a better situation. So again, they're selling that same property, 300,000 of equity. They're buying the same house, but instead of putting 300,000 in, they're putting 200,000 in. So in this case, they are carrying a little bit bigger mortgage at 600,000 with 200,000 of equity. In 2 years, what happens? Property appreciates to the same value, the mortgage is larger, so now they're sitting on 648. So they're a little bit behind. But what's happened with this additional $100,000? That's been invested into another piece of property which is being rented. So that property starts at 500,000, 400,000 mortgage, 100,000 of equity. So in 10 years, it appreciates to 672, $286,000 mortgage, and $386,000 of equity. So overall, they have now sitting at a little bit over $1 million. Now, if nothing else, when you're going into a listing presentation, is this a different conversation to have that will help you stand out as a realtor?
That's massive. That's like a $400,000 difference almost.
So what it's really about, it's about plugging them into the system. We've got a system that's completely built, that's built around educating clients to help convert them to action. So let's just summarize things quickly. So it's really about, alchemy. It's seeing value and opportunity that's there. Going back to the one slide that I said was the most important slide of the presentation. It's looking at how banks, based on their actions, are viewing real estate as an investment versus stocks, bonds, mutual funds, versus investing in a business. And then it's about teaching your clients ways they can address their top 3 or 4 financial concerns. From there, it's about tapping into your database and talking to your first-time buyers you're working with, in addition to current transactions, to show them different ways that they can use this strategy to help them reach their financial goals. So as we go through, we do have regular webinars we're running. We've got scripts available, videos getting into mortgage trends, and just different ways we can help your clients and help you to grow your business. So if you'd like to speak further, please reach out. Very happy to speak with you to find out ways that I can help you to grow your business.
Jonathan, I just want to say thank you very much for all of that incredible information. I did mention you were a numbers guy right at the beginning, and you certainly proved it. So thank you for that. As you can see, the website revive5forrealtors.com. If you want more information and you're not ready to commit or take action, Jonathan and I co-authored a book that tells you way more about this system. But of course, you can reach out to him at the information provided on the screen. The one thing I do want to say to realtors, though, is you are obviously in business for yourself, but using this system, you're not by yourself. We can help you get an average of 5 new deals out of your already existing database, and that's typically at a minimum. So, Jonathan, thank you very much for sharing all of that information. I really look forward to talking more with you.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. And it's been a pleasure speaking with all of you.
Have a fantastic day.